What's up, Twitter bots? Welcome back to the Bitcoin Magazine podcast. I'm Dave.
And I'm watching the Bitcoin price. I'm Grahm.
How's Bitcoin looking?
Dave, that's an irrelevant question. By the time this episode airs, it's going to change dramatically, so it doesn't matter.
Good point. Today's episode is going to be short. It's been kind of a quiet week for Bitcoin news, and...
Yeah, I'm sure an exchange is getting hacked quietly somewhere, but, when it happens, we'll report on it.
Yesterday, we were on the Bitcoin Twitters, and basically all anyone's talking about is Justin Sun's Buffett lunch.
Ah, yes, the great Buffett buffet.
Here's what happened. Justin Sun, the founder of the cryptocurrency Tron, won a lunch with Warren Buffett through a charity auction.
He bid $4,5,6,7,888 million.
Clever girl.
And now Sun gets to invite 7 friends to lunch with Buffett.
This sounds like a setup to a really poor joke.
Actually, it does. For newcomers less acquainted with Warren Buffett's stance on cryptocurrency, he called it rat poison last year. Here's a quick soundbite from an interview he did back in February.
I'll ask this very fleetingly. Has your position changed on Bitcoin?
No, I mean, it's too bad, but Bitcoin, it's ingenious, and blockchain is important, but Bitcoin has no unique value at all. It doesn't produce anything. You can stare at it all day and no little Bitcoins come out or anything like that. It's a delusion, basically.
Bitcoin is a delusion. A collusion delusion.
So today we thought this would be a fun topic to speculate on.
Who's he going to bring to lunch?
What's he going to wear?
What are they going to eat?
At what point does Buffett slap Sun in the face?
Or at what point does Sun slap Buffett in the face? Ooh.
But seriously, this is a heck of an opportunity. Sun's basically got a golden ticket.
Will Wonka hand over the keys to the factory, or will Justin Sun drown in the chocolate river?
I don't know.
Well, we may never know.
Today, we're joined by our friend Tom Shaughnessy, co-founder at Delphi Digital and host of the Chain Reaction podcast. Tom, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me on, guys.
All right, so to start, what are your initial thoughts of this whole Buffett lunch?
Well, first off, I think it's great that people are bidding it up and all the money goes to charity, so I don't think we could knock that. I think that's always a good thing. I don't know about what you guys thinking there.
Yeah. It's one thing, obviously we were thinking, how is Justin going to come in there and talk to Buffett about Bitcoin? But I think that might be way too narrow of a thought. Like it's hard to understand, he said he's bringing friends from like across the blockchain industry. So it's hard to understand what they're really going to focus on,
Yeah. To be honest, I think Justin's probably the absolute worst person that we could possibly send. I think it would be hard to find a worse person to send to lunch with Buffett, but, that's just my take. Yeah. I don't know that, we need to send somebody that, it's hard enough to understand crypto and respect, the mountains that we're moving on, basically moving financial boundaries here. But we're sending a guy who the crypto community doesn't even respect. So it's kind of hard to judge whether or not he's going to make a difference with, the investing titan of our generation when we're sending somebody that nobody in crypto even has any respect for.
Yeah. I know a little bit of his too, but to go over his background. So he was born in 1990, which means he's a year older than me. He has a lot more money than me. Tom, I'm going to assume he's got more money than you too.
He definitely does.
So, what is generally just in the cryptocurrency community, what do people have a problem with him about? Like Nick Carter tweeted this today in response to what's going on with the Buffett lunch. He said, Justin Sun is a time-traveling AI who was sent back by Voltaire to ruthlessly parody the cryptocurrency industry.
Wow. Yeah, I love Nick's takes. They're insanely smart and they resonate with people. But, I don't know if there's too much to go into with Justin because he just feels like kind of like a pump and dumpish type figure in the space. Copy and pasted a lot of Ethereum code. It seems like everything he does is for media and attention and not real building. Take your pick there by buying BitTorrent, by basically being the lead sponsor at Consensus this year with his weird pictures everywhere. Or even just recently with the Buffett lunch. I mean, he's basically taking money that ICO investors gave him. He's spending $4.5 million on a lunch with Buffett. And in my opinion, the only reason he's doing that is to push up the price of Tron itself. So I don't really know that. I mean, everybody has qualms with other founders in the space. Vitalik gets a lot of flack, Vlad for their views on certain subjects, but those are guys that are out there, building and creating and innovating. Meanwhile, I feel like Justin is just, trolling Vitalik on Twitter all day and trying to be a pump and dump marketer on Twitter as well.
Right. And Sun even said that he planned on bringing Vitalik and Litecoin founder Charlie Lee, which leads me to believe they might not even be talking about Bitcoin. Warren Buffett's, in his latest interview, I think that was in February, Dave.
Yeah.
He said blockchain was important, but Bitcoin was a delusion. So I'm really curious as to whether they're even going to touch on Bitcoin.
Yeah, I mean, if I was Justin and, everybody's a sales guy for their own platform, I mean, there's no reason why he wouldn't push Tron. But, I mean, we want Buffett to understand Bitcoin here, right? I mean, everybody could have their own views on other projects, but I think it's really worthwhile to give Buffett an understanding of what Bitcoin actually is. And I don't think that we're going to get that across by sending the guy who's running a super highly centralized platform that's copy and pasted to the dinner. But it is reassuring that Vitalik and Charlie Lee will be going, because hopefully they could, share some insight.
Graham, didn't you pick up a little intel on where they're going to be dining?
I did. Let's see. I'll find the link here. It's the Smith and Wilinski Steakhouse in New York, which is a little wah, wah.
I'm on the website right now, and just like their tagline is a steakhouse to end all arguments.
How appropriate. I was really hoping it was going to be like Red Lobster. I would have died. That would have been so funny.
I thought they would have been at Dairy Queen or McDonald's. I mean, Buffett's known for loving those places.
Yeah. I mean, I think we can at least imagine it's going to be a nice a steak might be a little bit too heavy for lunch, but it's going to be a nice lunch. Probably maybe some like linguine and clams. Like I can only imagine. I'm probably never going to end up in a place like that. So
I imagine the steaks at that steakhouse probably way more than Justin Sung anyway. So I don't know what he's going to eat.
Yeah. Okay.
Anyway.
Yeah. And then, so like actually getting to the point here is, let's like forget what's going to happen and what Justin Sun's going to do with this opportunity, and just like think about if any of us had the opportunity to have a 3-hour lunch with Warren Buffett and we could bring 7 friends, who would we bring to convince the Buffett of Bitcoin's value?
Yeah, I mean, just stepping back, I mean, I guess we have to think about, who our audience is here, right? And Buffett's obviously an investing titan, but he definitely thinks about things and, cash flows and dividends and, what he can buy out and, fearless founders and things along that nature. So I think we really have to I would try and bring people who could kind of, in a way, potentially, I know this started 3 hours, but kind of re-architect his view on Bitcoin from being, what he called rat poison to being like a foundational element in the global economy here. And, I think it has to take somebody who could, mentally move Buffett from, hey, this is a fraud or this is like some type of company to, hey, this is the value that's going to flow within all of the businesses and the people of the future. And it's a really hard mental model to jump. And I definitely think it's going to be hard over 3 hours, but I think we should focus on people that could drive that point home.
Just like clear understanding with Buffett is he's one of the most successful investors ever. And he's also living at the end of his life. So he's made his fortune. He has no reason to seek out Bitcoin or any other cryptocurrency project in order to, as an investing thing. So I think the whole idea, all of that, is sort of off the table. So like what is it that would actually make Buffett want to get out of his comfort zone? Because that's the other thing is that he has like an area of competency and where he knows a lot about particular subjects, and he doesn't usually invest outside of that area. So I know for one,
that's a good point.
Yeah, I know I think for the last 20 years he's been he's pretty anti-gold. He basically, he just is not interested in it. So kind of things he does invest in is like Coke, ice cream, very tangible things that, you can pick up at the store.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I guess the question is like, are we actually going to be able to ever convince Buffett? And, I think the answer is probably not, but I think that the best that we could probably do is, or the best that people at the lunch could do, whoever ends up going with Son, is hopefully planting the seed or the idea of like Inception style of, hey, this is interesting, this is happening, and it's not going away, and it's going to change a lot of things. So, maybe that will lead Buffett to say, when he's looking for people to take over, maybe he'll be open to people who are, a little more innovative in looking at the stuff. And look, I don't knock Buffett for having that circle of confidence, he always talks about. I think that's, it's hard to stay within that. And he obviously is unbeaten there, and he's a legend. But I think the best we could do is kind of plant the seeds that, Bitcoin and crypto is here to stay.
And Tom, you have more of a, I want to say, mainstream financial background. Grahm and I, we come from media, so I'd be interested. Could you just briefly explain sort of like your experience in finance and like how it got you here?
Yeah, sure. So I went to Rutgers Business School, and then I had a position as an equity research associate at Oppenheimer on the cloud and communications team. So it was a lot of white papers and tech, but the nitty gritty was a lot of normal models with DCFs and valuation and multiples and bottoms up approaches. So a lot of modeling and just the traditional kind of equity research and finance route. So the models were really clear. You already had all of the frameworks in place, and you could make easy comparisons company to company or sector to sector. And then individual analysts will get exotic on where they want to call plays and stuff like that. But I come from a normal traditional background, so I wrote a 100-page blockchain white paper at my previous job. And then I fell down the rabbit hole and I said, I can't do this here. And I opened up 51% crypto research and was just pumping out research every 2 weeks. And then we merged that with Delphi Digital. And now I have 4 amazing partners along with myself.
Word.
Sorry if that was really long. I feel like I have that down at this point.
Yeah. 100-page blockchain research white paper. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, no, it's nothing like I wasn't creating code or anything like that. Just, covering everything that happened to date. And I got a similar response from the bank I was at the time because, they didn't even want to cover it to begin with. But, thank God I had a really progressive analyst at the time that I was working for, so he was okay with it.
Yeah, so
I'm changing my lunch friend list to include Tom. And you can bring your 100-page paper.
I don't know if I'm allowed to pass it around, but I'll slip you a copy.
Might be insider trading, actually.
Look, guys, I'm trying to have fun at this podcast. I don't want to go to jail.
Yes, yeah, no, nobody wants to go to jail here.
So Tom, this being the Bitcoin Magazine podcast, we're talking about Bitcoin primarily, but I'm just curious, like, where do you fall with blockchain? Blockchain it's hit a lot of hurdles as far as like being adopted more widely. What's your take since you've written a 100-page white paper on it?
Yeah, I mean, that was basically for their institutional clients, that white paper. So it wasn't, like redoing code or anything crazy, like, nowhere on the level of the people in the space. But I'm definitely not a Bitcoin maximalist. I'm not an ETH maximalist. I'm not a maximalist on anything. I'm definitely a tech maximalist. I love Bitcoin, own it. I own Ethereum, Tezos, Decred, Maker, a bunch of others as well. But I don't ever want to become a maximalist in anything. I think holding maximalist viewpoints, if you hold a maximalist viewpoint in gold, you never would have bought Bitcoin, right? So I never want to be pigeonholed when it comes to tech or innovation, especially considering how fast it evolves and mutates. So while I think Bitcoin is amazing, I think, Ethereum is the innovation playground for blockchain. And I don't think that's even disputed at this point with the number of devs working on it. I think everything Tezos is doing is super interesting. Decred has numerous, cool features and changes that they made to make that platform really interesting. But yeah, I mean, I like to, the space is definitely not short on projects. I mean, there's hundreds of them. And, at Delphi, we cover projects all the time. So we get to see them all in real time. And, I really want to be able to get involved with the entire landscape of the space.
Right. Okay. So getting to our list of friends, our super friends who we would call out to if we had the chance to have a lunch with Buffett. Tom, do you want to go first, or I can go first, or?
I feel like there's definitely going to be some overlap. I mean, maybe we should go at the same time. Or
Yeah. Well, how about you do one and I'll do one, and
all
then
right, cool.
So you do one, I'll do one, and then Grahm goes.
Yeah.
All right, sweet. I'd probably start with Pomp, Anthony Pompliano. He's on our board. He's institutional. He's investing in real enterprises that are actually building out use cases today. I believe Morgan Creek Digital invested in BlockFi, which is crushing it. I think they just put out $1 million in interest yesterday. Lightning Labs, they have a bunch of other, but I feel like he has his ear to the ground on, the actual companies and enterprises that aren't strictly token based, that are innovating and building today. And the other thing about Pomp, as anybody who deals with him knows, is Pomp delivers and he closes. And I think that he would be able to get his point across in a nice way.
Yeah, I mean, just to add to that, I had Pomp on my list too, so I'll start with him. But I think a lot of people might look at him in the industry and they might say, like he doesn't have the full technical knowledge that some of these people really do about what Bitcoin is. But I think when you're talking to Buffett, you're gonna want somebody who can sit there and drive a really good argument and be persuasive. And Pomp, he has this position to where he did a CNBC interview recently with one of the Shark Tank guys, Kevin O'Leary. The guy admitted to buying all of the altcoins on Coinbase and losing his money, which is pretty
He lost $70.
But Pomp basically just ran circles around him, and I think he does a podcast almost every day. It seems like it's hard to imagine that he would not be somebody who would at least help move the conversation forward.
Yeah, totally. And, the other thing is, given the nature of what he invests in, I think he's uniquely positioned to kind of bridge the gap between Bitcoin and enterprises and companies. And, that's probably where Buffett is most interested in is, how's BlockFi going to outperform or Lightning Labs or what have you. But if Pomp's able to tie in the Bitcoin use case there, which I think he can, and how it underpins all of those companies, I think he could do some damage at the lunch.
Well, I agree. I had Pomp on my list too. And you guys, pretty much already said it all, but I agree. He's institutional. And I'm outside of Bitcoin and all the technical stuff. I'm going to appeal to the human side of Warren Buffett, and I think that Warren Buffett would see a younger version of himself in Pomp, and he could play those strings, and he could. And it's like you said with that interview with Kevin O'Leary, he was level-headed, he didn't lose his cool, and he just kind of ran circles around him in a really professional manner. And I think he's a great ambassador for Bitcoin.
Yeah, it just occurred to me too. I think I heard a podcast where Pomp was talking and he admitted to loving McDonald's. So he and Buffett actually both love McDonald's cheeseburgers. That's
See, there you go. It's not about the technical stuff. It's about connecting over fast food.
Exact. Sell yourself. I think Pomp tweeted that out, that he goes there every week with his with Paulina, his girlfriend. I believe he tweeted that out. I hope he did at this point.
That's hilarious.
We won't fact check it. We'll just assume it's right.
I mean, hey, that's awesome. It sells and it's human, right? It's authentic.
Yeah. Tom, on to your next one.
I would probably send next up. I'm going out of order a little bit here, but Dan Held, I would send it. He posted that lengthy report, but it's totally worth the read on Bitcoin security is fine. But the real reason is I had the pleasure of being in a conversation with him and a couple of others at a meetup we went to a couple weeks ago, or Coin Center dinner, whatever it was. And I won't give the names of who he's talking to, but his ability to kind of take the person's example of who didn't understand Bitcoin and Dan to put himself in that person's shoes and then argue it or explain it from that viewpoint was just awesome. So I definitely think Dan's somebody who's level-headed and he can really kind of explain Bitcoin in like a re-architected mental fashion for people. And I think that's pretty powerful.
Yeah, I had Dan on my list too. And we actually spoke with him recently on an older episode of the show. And, I think the thing that I like most about Dan is that he believes in capitalism and he believes in freedom. And that's sort of where he bases all of his beliefs. And I feel like Warren Buffett could relate to that.
Yeah, I would definitely agree there.
Yeah. So you guys want to hear my secret weapon?
Yes.
Oh God.
Okay. So and I was not really as familiar about her until today. Is Abigail Johnson. She's the CEO of Fidelity Investments. So Abigail is somebody who is in mainstream finance, who is showing interest in adoption of cryptocurrency already. She announced in 2015 that Fidelity would start mining Bitcoin. They've recently announced they're offering I think it's a Bitcoin. I can't remember if it's a futures product or if it's a Bitcoin trading product. But
I mean, that's a great secret weapon. I didn't even see that one coming, but that is a really good idea given how long Fidelity's been in the space. I think they've been mining since 2014, and then up until today with their institutional focus with custody and trading. I mean, that's a huge draw.
Yeah, and it's I was thinking too, like if you really were trying to think that Buffett could be convinced by the end of the lunch, you'd want to go with somebody who could actually like argue his perspectives and like actually move the conversation in a way that not everybody is in complete like siloed agreement, and Buffett is just sort of like having to just like tolerate them all talking at him,
Yeah, I mean, they don't really get that much time. I mean, it says that he could bring. I saw conflicting reports. I'm reading a news article now, and it says 7 people with Justin. So that's 8 people total, and they only have 3 hours. So I mean, minus all the back and forth and Buffett's questions in between. I mean, what do these guys have? Like 10 or 15 minutes each, really?
Yeah, and another point too that Harrison Ballard, a coworker of ours, brought up is that like if you really want to talk to Buffett and like make a connection with him, you're not going to want to have 7 people. You're going to want to have like maybe 3 or 4.
Totally. I couldn't agree more there. I mean, you got to do 8 introductions like that. There, he sent to 33% of each person's 15 minutes or 20 minutes. So you're totally right there. It's just like a waste of time at that point.
Okay, so Tom, who's the next one on your list?
Tough one, but I'd probably go Nick Carter. Just excellent at dispelling FUD. Obviously founded Coinmetrics, so he definitely has the analytical backing to discuss it. Doubt it the conversation would go there, but he also has Castle Island Ventures, so he can discuss a lot on the investing side. But I don't know. I just feel like he's able to kind of go back and forth with anybody, and he's very open to ideas and issues and problems, and is happy to explore and learn more. And all my interactions with him have been, great and really personable. So I think he could definitely do some damage, especially given his, insane amount of knowledge about Bitcoin as well.
Right on. I can't really speak to Nick Carter as much. I love his tweets, but I'm not as familiar with his work. But I mean, by all that accounts, it sounds like he'd be a good analytics person too, because that's sort of what we're missing in the conversation about the people we're talking about is somebody who can actually like talk about the data.
Yeah, I think Nick could definitely go in depth on the data, but I think probably his selling point is that he knows what not to get lost on. Like I'm pretty sure would be well versed in not going down some ultra technical routes that really wouldn't provide any value to Buffett. I think that he can answer Buffett's questions, and he's done enough research that he could zoom out in a good way.
So the next two I had are sort of like by the same reason. So Buffett, it's well known that he spends about 2 hours every day reading. He's basically just reading any kind of investment stuff, what companies are doing. He reads papers mostly. So I think if you can get Buffett curious to read something, once he gets sort of like an interest that way, he would be more obliging to not only hear what they're saying, but to look into it in his own time. So the first person I brought up for that was Saifedean Ammous, who he read the Bitcoin Standard. And in my opinion, that's just the simplest, best explanation for what Bitcoin is in an economic way. And I don't know if you guys have read the Bitcoin Standard.
Yeah, I mean, it's really easy to read. You're right. I think that he would definitely enjoy reading it. I'm just wondering. Yeah, you're right. I mean, I feel like the space is so podcast driven. I forget people read books, right? But I don't know. I mean, the Bitcoin Standard is obviously great to send. But another idea that we could hit him with even is just get like the top Medium posts out there. Throw in a couple of white papers and maybe some podcast transcripts, and I think you could really do some damage in 2 hours of reading time too.
And then to add to that, another person who comes at Bitcoin with a completely different angle is Alex Gladstein. He works for the HHF, I think it is. I cannot think of what it's called.
I think it's HRF.
HRF.
Yeah, the Human Rights Foundation. I think it's a nonprofit.
The Human Rights Foundation. And he also and they also do the Oslo Freedom Forum, which I went to back in September. And Alex sees a big use case in how foreign aid can be helped by cryptocurrency. In a lot of ways, he's looking at like remittance payments. He also is looking at the anti-censorship nature of cryptocurrencies, especially Bitcoin. So I think if you do talk to Buffett about, if you show him like Venezuela, things like that, I'm sure he's already heard of it, but it's a way to get his interest in another direction as opposed to just talking about sort of like the traditional enterprise business use cases.
No, Alex is a great addition. That's a great call, especially given his foreign aid work. I was thinking over who I would bring, and I was thinking why don't we get somebody from Venezuela to kind of drive home use Bitcoin to kind of drive home, how destructive, horrible monetary policies could be, but and insane inflation. But I just don't know how valuable it would be with how many other people you could bring,
Right. For sure. And so Alex has written this like New York Times article basically explaining Bitcoin's use for foreign aid. So the idea there is that maybe like they would be able to share that beforehand, or he could tell them about it. They could at least mention it. I don't know. But so those are my two writers that I recommend.
Right. Well, since you chose two, I'm going to pick two, and it's the Winklevoss twins.
Ooh.
They're huge cryptocurrency and blockchain advocates, and I think with their connection to Facebook and all the investment stuff that they do, I think that they would be well fitted to sit at that table. And going back to what you said, like having more of a small council type meeting, Game of Thrones reference there. I think those two with another couple big hitters like Dan and Pomp would just like knock it out of the park.
Yeah, that's a really good point, the Winklevoss twins. I didn't think of them originally, but I think that's a great call because they're not only well-versed on crypto, obviously everything with Gemini, but they're obviously really well-versed on the tech connection. And the other thing is they're both polished, and they can probably talk to Pomp on his field.
Yes, I agree.
And then I was just kind of having fun with this, and I was, sort of thinking about the fact that actually convincing Buffett that Bitcoin is something worth paying attention to might not happen. So in that scenario, I was thinking, maybe this would be just one big media boon. Like I'm pretty sure this is not going to be televised, but if it is televised, I would really like to see John McAfee on there, just having lunch with them, just eating steak with Buffett.
I mean, would John McAfee go drugged up, or would he be normal? It's always a question mark, right?
I would want full on McAfee.
He's like cutting his steak with a big Rambo knife.
Firing off a few warning shots.
Yeah, just to announce his arrival. Yeah.
And obviously, if it's not going to be televised, McAfee is probably the last person I would want to be at that lunch.
Yeah, that's true.
It might go off the rails, but it would be entertaining.
So, Tom, who are the rest of your people?
Yeah, I'm torn between Ari Paul, who I think does probably an unmatched job on his tweet threads on Twitter. Obviously, all his work through Block Tower is incredible, but his ability to link like really complex financial, ideas like options and reflexivity and all that stuff back to crypto and Bitcoin, I think is really powerful. So I think he would definitely be a really good financial type Bitcoin-ish link for Buffett as well. And he's also, well-versed and polished. And I think that he would definitely prepare and know what he's going to say at that lunch before he walked in the door.
Yeah.
That's a good choice.
I definitely agree with that. I think the idea of actually synthesizing, that would actually be trying to take the technical aspects and try and help Buffett understand it, which is like, it's definitely a worthy attempt, as worthy as the other things we're speculating on.
Yeah. And I mean, he's raised a large fund, and, his investors are from USV and Andreessen Horowitz and stuff like that. And, he has a really great blog. If you haven't been on there, he's written about governance and all types of topics in a really understandable way. So if we were going to send Buffett anything to read, I would definitely send him probably Ari's last 5 blog posts.
Tom, last one on the list.
Last one on the list, I'd probably send Murad. I think that's probably on one of your guys' list too, right?
Yeah, I had Murad.
Yeah, obviously talked to Murad a lot on Telegram and stuff like that, but he's known for his, crazy charts that are great on Twitter. I'm not a TA guy. I don't understand most of it, but what I do think Murad could do damage on is not the institutional, but the global macro argument for Bitcoin. And he's done a really good job with that on circling back here, Pomp's podcast, where I think the title is even The Ultimate Case for Bitcoin or something along those lines. But, just zooming out from Venezuela, talking about Bitcoin on a macro scale, I think that could really resonate with Buffett and kind of hopefully change his thinking if he's thinking about this as, a company or a scam to, something greater and the real store of value of the future here.
Yeah, I don't follow Murad a lot, but from some of the stuff I do see, a lot of it gets back to the importance of scarcity. Saifedean also does this in his book. It's like that root thing that you can explain to anybody for what has value and what doesn't.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. One of the other things I like to think about, I mean, scarcity is huge. It's an easy selling point. It's easy to understand. My partner, Kevin Kelly, just wrote the institutional case for crypto and Bitcoin on our site for our members. And, what he did in a really great manner was he kind of just walked through all the issues with what we have today with pension plans being underfunded and central banks and inflation and, QE and everything. And he makes a really good, zoomed out case for why Bitcoin could work. So anything along those lines, the macro or the global argument, I think somebody with that footing should be at the table.
Yeah, and I think I'm going to cut my list off there, with the understanding that it's really it's hard to assume that that they would have enough time to add more people.
Yeah, that's true.
It's true.
But if there's more time, I'd have to say BTC's CEO, David Bailey. If you like his mom, if you get David actually going, if you get him actually talking about always Bitcoin, but pretty much anything, he's a very he's very smart. His background is microfinance, and he knows his stuff in and out. he is probably the guy who has started most of my understanding and like beliefs in that Bitcoin is something that can work. So I would definitely point to David.
Yeah, that's a great call. And, just a side note before we close out, I would love to see somebody just send Buffett Bitcoin, give him a wallet. What's 7 or 8 grand to somebody when you could, even press release it or, just to show him and get him involved with it. That could be really powerful if they're able to do that at the lunch.
I agree. Yeah, I had David on my list too. He's been around since the beginning, and he just really wants to drive the conversation of Bitcoin and make it fun again. And I think that's really important right now when you look at Bitcoin Twitter and people are – so there's just sort of this civil war going on, and it's – we need to have sort of a real community and one narrative. And I think he's a good guy to have at that table.
Totally.
I have a question for you guys. Outside of cryptocurrency Bitcoin people, who's your guest, dead or alive, that you'd like to throw in there?
I'll let you guys go first.
David?
Abraham Lincoln.
Abraham Lincoln.
Someone who doesn't even know what the internet is. That would be great.
He would get along well with Buffett. I think it would be Buffett would probably have a good time of it. And I don't think I need to explain it more than that.
Hey, that's a tough one. I'd probably send Hal Finney.
Yeah.
Hal Finney.
But
Nice.
I mean, that's Bitcoin, I don't know, but not really outside Bitcoin, but that's who I just automatically think of.
Grahm, I'm looking at your list right now.
Yeah. You like it?
Okay.
I went off the rails a little bit with my list.
Okay. Explain it.
Okay, so I wrote Mike Tyson down because Mike Tyson did partner with Bitcoin Direct and launched some Bitcoin ATMs in Vegas back in 2015. And I just think Mike Tyson's really funny, and it would be funny to see him in that conversation. And then I wrote Batman just because Batman's rich, and I feel like Batman would get Bitcoin and he would own a lot of it.
Which Batman, though? Are we talking Christian Bale, or who are we talking here?
Man, I wasn't even thinking actors. I was thinking comic book, but if I had to go with an actor, I'm going to go with Michael Keaton Batman.
Oh, wow. All right, I can't argue there. I just love The Dark Knight, and, I thought that was great, but I get it.
I can totally see one of these future Batman movies having something to do with like cyber criminals and like cryptocurrencies.
Yeah, hopefully it's not Ben Affleck, though. He was a horrible Batman.
Isn't Robert Pattinson the new Batman?
I think so, yeah.
There's already a new Batman.
Yeah.
Oh, they ruined it. The third Batman movie with Christian Bale where Robin swings into the layer. They should have just kept it going.
Oh, yeah. I don't know. I think Robert Pattinson would be a great Batman. But, I was talking to my buddies about this, and it really all depends on how DC approaches these next few movies because they have just been turning out shit.
Yeah, Marvel's not making it easy. I mean, Marvel's doing $1 billion a movie out here.
Yeah, well, now that they kind of wrapped up their universe with Endgame, DC has kind of an opportunity here to reset what they've done, recount their sins.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, it's hard to go from Twilight to Batman, but we'll see if Pattinson can pull it off, right?
Yeah. Well, you got to respect the guy. He hasn't really done – well, let me rephrase that. Since the Twilight movies, he's pretty much only done projects that he wants to do.
Yeah. I'm kind of like a movie buff, but I really did like his movie Good Time. I think it came out 2 or 3 years ago.
That was a good flick. I like that one.
Yeah.
Anyway, off the rails. Let's just put Robert Pattinson at the table. Why not?
All right, yeah.
Get him to the list.
And you also had our coworker Mikey Tyberg.
Oh yeah, Michael Tyberg. He works with us at BTC Media, and to me, like I got into this space about a year ago, and I just found it really interesting. And I'm like you, Tom. I'm not like a crazy maximalist on anything either. But when I asked this guy that I work with, Michael Tyberg, just, like, what is this thing? Like, what is it all about? Help me understand it. To me, he represents the new age. He represents what young people are going to be saying everywhere in another 10 years.
Scary,
and
right?
Yeah, it's scary, but he does it in a way that helps you understand it and not be as scared of it.
Yeah, no, when I meet people like that, I love it because it's, the reason I own Bitcoin and the reason I'm in the space. I love the macro argument for it. I love the scarcity. I love proof of work. I like all of the aspects of it, but it's easy to kind of forget about that. And when you meet people that kind of bring that to the surface again, especially younger people, it's great to see.
It's pretty cool. It's going to be a crazy wild ride in the next 10 years, guys.
Yep.
Yeah, I know. I wonder who's gonna bid on Buffett's lunch next year.
That's a good question. Hey, maybe it'll be us.
Hey, maybe Justin Sun is setting a trend, and we'll cost Warren Buffett for the rest of his life at a lunch every year.
I mean, he annoys the hell out of Vitalik to begin with. I wouldn't be surprised if he starts tweeting at Buffett every day.
Yeah.
We can only hope.
Yeah.
You guys think we're going to see any Buffett Sun billboards come up?
I wouldn't put it past the Tron marketing team.
I hope not.
They'll do anything for a view.
Well, anyway, Tom, thanks for getting on the show with us and just speculating. We'd love to have you back on some other time, but you've got another show to record, so we'll let you go.
Yeah, guys, it's been awesome and fun, and literally whenever you want, just text me. I'll come on.
Right on.
Thanks, Tom.
See you guys around.
See you, buddy. The Bitcoin Magazine podcast is a BTC Media produced podcast on the Let's Talk Bitcoin network. It was produced and edited by Grahm and myself. Theme music provided by Billy Sly from the Crypto Cantina. Special thanks to our guests Tom Shaughnessy and Satoshi Nakamoto. We are eternally grateful. Visit bitcoinmagazine.com for more in-depth news, analysis, and resources about the most successful peer-to-peer currency. And make sure to follow us on Twitter at Bitcoin Magazine. You can find more engaging crypto podcasts over at letstalkbitcoin.com and can follow them on Twitter at the LTB Network for all the latest episodes. Be sure to subscribe to the show on the Apple Podcast app, Spotify, or wherever else you get your podcasts. And if you get the time, please leave us a review. It really helps us improve the show and reach new listeners. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time.